What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the shelf, and today we are talking about The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 7. This one's called Convergence. It's the last episode of the season, guys. We made it. That was a really fast 7 weeks. That went way too quick, and that's going to be something that we get into a little bit here today. But yeah, welcome back. This is going to be an episode review as well as a season overall thoughts kind of thing. So I'm going to run through the episode and kind of give my opinion on everything that goes down. And then towards the end, we'll talk a little bit about the season as a whole and all the things that it's doing well and the things it's not doing so well. So let's just jump into it. So the episode starts up and Ellie has returned back to the theater after torturing Nora, and Dina's kind of like patching her up and looking at all her wounds and stuff. And Ellie gives this sort of monologue about how it was easy to torture Nora, and she didn't think it would be so easy, and she got the information a little easier than she expected, and she's having to sort of reckon with this path that she's gone down. And I found this to be some of the more effective stuff in the episode, because this is what we needed about 80% more of, where we're just not getting quite enough of Ellie going down this route, this path that she's taking of vengeance, and how it's going to ultimately wind up changing her and shaping her as a person and the lives of the people around her, which is ultimately what the whole second game is about. This is arguably some of the most important stuff, certainly as far as Ellie's considered. So I liked this part. We, like I said, did not get nearly enough of this because, it's the last episode. Like we get that whole scene of her with Nora and how she's sort of reveling in the fact that she's not affected by the spores in the episode 5, I think, because episode 6 is all flashbacks. So we basically skip over 6 from 5 to 7, and that's sort of the continuation. And so the fact that episode 6 was also all flashbacks, it's important narratively to help flesh everyone's characters out. But I would almost wonder about the placement of those flashbacks, because it sort of impedes the progress of Ellie's descent, because it's kind of you're chopping it off right when it's starting to get going. And then by the time we get back to it, it's the season finale. So I think that was probably not the best decision. So anyway, then Ellie talks to Dina, and she explains to her what Joel did and why he was killed by Abby and her crew. And I almost forgot at this point that Dina didn't know this stuff. She didn't know that Joel killed all those fireflies to save Ellie. I straight up forgot that Dina did not know this yet. And, maybe that's just a me thing. Maybe I'm just a dummy. But this had a lot of weight as well, because Dina's finally seeing, she's kind of unsure now. And whereas before she's been very resolute, because of what happened with her and her family, and she's been very resolute and steadfast as far as helping Ellie complete her mission. So this has kind of, rocked her a little bit, and now she's not quite so sure. So things are starting to fray a little bit. Things are starting to kind of go off the rails a tad bit. So on the next day, Ellie and Jesse leave to go find Tommy. Meanwhile, Dina stays back at the hotel, and the two of them kind of butt heads a little bit, and they argue. And we get the revelation that Jesse actually did not vote for Ellie's plan with a yes back at Jackson. Despite kind of implying that he had her back on this matter, he straight up did not vote for this, which was kind of a revelation. And, Jesse further doubles down by telling Ellie a story about how, a while back there were these traitors who came through Jackson, and one of them was this girl that Jesse really connected with. And Jesse contemplated leaving Jackson to go along with this girl. But because of Jesse's character and who he is, he, uses this as an example to explain to Ellie that he does things for the community. And, him leaving would have been a detriment to Jackson, because he's kind of poised to be the next leader of the town. So then we juxtapose that with Ellie, who, does things for selfish reasons, depending on who you ask. Ellie kind of fires back with, my community was beaten in front of me to death while I had to watch. So, this is also a sort of a thesis of the show where it's this question of for the good of the self or for the good of others. So it makes you wonder, it makes you step back from the situation, right? It's like Ellie needs to look at this objectively and without these blinders on and say, is this actually going to benefit Jackson, or is this because I selfishly want revenge? What is the value of something like revenge in this world that we live in now? And, again, these are all very central themes of the game, central themes of the show. So it almost feels like Jesse's entire role as a character in this show is to sort of provide that juxtaposition and sort of be a foil to Ellie, where they do have this mutual respect for each other at the end of the day, because Jesse does know that, if it was him in Joel's place, then, maybe she wouldn't have quite the same visceral reaction, but she would certainly go out of her way to, get revenge or help him, whatever the situation was. So there is that mutual understanding, but at the end of the day, they differ very much in terms of, how they prioritize things. So it's an interesting duality, but it's a change from Jesse's character in the game. He's a little more cold in this show, and, he definitely doesn't seem to like Ellie that much, but, again, they do have that respect. So whereas in the game, they're a little bit more friendly with each other, and Jesse's sort of, more of an all-around, just kind of, he's a little bit less uptight than he is in the show, I would say. So anyway, while they're moving through Seattle looking for Tommy, they encounter this Seraphite who is being sort of jumped by all these WLF, and they take him, prisoner, and Ellie is like, we gotta help him. And Jesse's very much like, no, the fuck we don't. Like, we are not risking everything for this person that we don't know. And, again, it's that sort of cross-section of their ideals where Ellie's willing to do these things despite whether it's beneficial for her to the detriment of people around her. Like, she's very short-sighted in that sense. And in a way, it's sort of admirable and noble, but I also don't think it's conducive to life in this post-apocalyptic world where, if you do this for too long, if you do things Ellie's way for too long, and you're just guaranteed to not live a very long life, and it's hard to say which is the right way, because it's very possible that people wouldn't do the same thing for her, but, she does it anyway. But so it's very muddled though, and I don't know that the messaging is conveyed as smoothly as it probably could have been. So after this conversation, Ellie and Jesse are still moving through Seattle when they get a glimpse of this giant aquarium, right? And Ellie puts together Nora's final words, which were whale or something to that effect, which it meant to indicate where Abby has been hiding out at. So in this moment, Ellie's like, oh, that's where Abby is. And she kind of forgets all about Tommy and, their plan with Jesse. And she just goes straight for, I need to go to the aquarium now and find Abby because she's there. And Jesse's like, no, we don't need to do that. And Jesse says, no, we need to go find Tommy. And so, because they overheard a radio call on the transmission where they heard that there was a sniper who was very likely to be Tommy, and, he's pinned down some WLF soldiers. So Jesse's like, we got to go back up Tommy. And Ellie's like, no, I got to go kill Abby. So the two of them, bitterly kind of part ways a little bit, and Ellie heads off to the aquarium. So while she's headed to the aquarium on this boat that she finds, she gets hit by this big wave, and the wave sort of beaches her somehow on the Seraphite's nearby island, right? This section of the episode felt so out of place to me and almost comedically short-lived. It's very strange. So Ellie wakes up on this island. She gets taken prisoner almost immediately by some Seraphites. They take her to this wooded glen where they have some nooses conveniently already ready to go, and they're about to hang her. A sort of alarm is sounded, signifying that the WLF are attacking right now. And so there's this alarm, and they're like, leave her, we gotta go. Where before, there was this Seraphite child who kind of, for some reason, is the one giving the permission to go ahead and execute Ellie. It's very odd. There's this kid Seraphite, and he gives the thumbs up. Or no, he does something like this, where he kind of implies that they're going to eviscerate her or something, even though they're hanging her, which, again, was weird. Which is sort of meant to cross, reference with the scene earlier in the episode where Ellie was willing to jeopardize herself and Jesse and their whole mission in order to help this Seraphite that they don't know. Whereas, here it's like, okay, well, clearly the same courtesy is not being extended to her, and any Seraphite is willing to give the go-ahead to execute her. despite not knowing who she is, where she came from, if she's WLF, if she's friendly, doesn't matter. All these different ideals are kind of being thrown in our face, and it's sort of meant to be like, which one do you think is right? Because we're not going to say which one's right, because that would be, you know, that's not the point. The whole point is to kind of call into question everyone's sort of moral standing and be like, is this the right thing to do? Is this not the right thing to do? If it means protecting yourself and the ones, potentially protecting the ones that you love and yourself. And that's just sort of a byproduct of this world and, you know, the kind of trust issues that you would run into, because there almost certainly are people out there who, you know, mean you harm and will take the things that you have, but it's rooted from a place of, I'm going to commit these acts of violence against you because it will help me protect these other innocent people who I love. And is it morally justifiable to do that if you're doing it to help others? And, you know, that is probably an extreme example of no, it's not justifiable. But, you know, that's just the sort of thing that you see in this world where, you know, martial law kind of reigns and people just kind of do whatever they have to do or whatever they want to do. But anyway, so Ellie leaves the island almost right away. You know, the alarm sounds, they all leave her, and then she just kind of leaves and just goes and gets back on her boat and continues going to the aquarium. After this scene played out, I was like, what was the point of that? Other than to sort of serve as, you know, a cinematic sort of explanation of the juxtaposition between this scene and the scene earlier where she was, you know, willing to save the Seraphite kid. It just feels very abrupt and random, and it's so short-lived. It's like she's on the island, oh, now she's back in the boat. It was really weird, and it's like, this is what we're doing in the finale? Like, the episode's barely 50 minutes. It's not even an hour. So it just felt like a weird use of our time, which has, you know, we'll talk about in the overall season review, is just the way that they've been handling the small amount of time that they have. This was, you know, a prime example of, dude, what are we doing? We have stuff to do. We don't have time for this. At least from my perspective, anyway. So Ellie gets to the aquarium and she creeps in and she encounters Owen and Mel, and, you know, she has them both at gunpoint, and she does a callback to something that Joel did in season 1, which is, you're going to point to the map where Abby is, and then you better do it the same way and point to the same location, otherwise things aren't going to go well for you guys. Which was interesting because Ellie's not actually present in season 1 when Joel is doing that. She's not there. So I don't know if this was a tactic that Joel like either reiterated to her on a later date, or if she just happened to do the same thing. Felt a little too on the nose for that to be the case, because it's very evocative of what Joel does. But, you know, so that aside, so Owen's like, don't point to her location on the map. We're not privy to this information yet, but, you know, in the game, Owen and Abby have sort of a relationship, and Mel, you know, they have like a love triangle thing. So he's very much like, don't sell out Abby. Mel's a little less forgiving. She's obviously got more going on and more to live for, as we're about to find out, because, you know, as she's about to go and point to the map for her, Owen reaches for a gun and Ellie shoots to defend herself, which is such a stupid decision on Owen's part. Like, you've effectively taken the decision out of Ellie's hands, and whether she was going to kill you or not, there was a chance that she would not have killed you, but you effectively made it so that now she has to, which is incredibly stupid given the circumstances, because Ellie shoots Owen, it kills him, and then it goes through Mel's neck, and she begins to slowly bleed out and die as well. And that's when we discover that Mel is pregnant, which is, you know, obviously providing, again, yet another juxtaposition between her and Dina, who, you know, is a person who is very close to Ellie, obviously. And so that's fresh on Ellie's mind, this aspect of the pregnancy and, you know, protecting that at all costs. And now here she is discovering that she has effectively killed 3 people, you know, against her own wishes or not. She's put herself in a position where that's a thing that has now happened, and she's more or less directly responsible. So this is a pretty, you know, effective emotional moment. And we discovered then that, you know, the show adds a new wrinkle that's not in the game, where Mel is like, I need you to perform a C-section and get this baby out of me. Ellie is kind of in shock at this, and she's not able to, you know, kind of proceed with the mental, physical faculties required to carry out such, such a procedure, right? Even under the best of circumstances, that's not an easy thing to do. Mel is trying to guide her through it, but she's dying very quickly, and before she's able to kind of explain how to do it, she's dead. And Ellie's kind of just left there shocked and, not really knowing what's going on. And then at that moment, Jesse and Tommy arrive, and, they see what's going on and what has happened, and then they kind of just get her out of there. So this is a pretty big scene. It's very emotional, but it's different from the game again. So in the game, Ellie kind of, kills Owen and Mel out of this sort of, it becomes a very quick physical altercation. And it's a change from the game because it sort of takes the decision out of Ellie's hands, and it's a lot less savage, and they kind of soften it because, in the game, Ellie kills Owen with a gun, I believe, and she stabs Mel in the neck. So it's a lot more violent, and it feels as though the show is not willing to go to places like that, and instead they're changing things, which what it does is it fundamentally changes how we perceive the character's actions, because Ellie killing Mel by accident is a lot less extreme than Owen reaching for her gun in the game, Ellie killing him, and then they have an altercation, Ellie and Mel, in the game over the knife, to which Ellie then kills Mel with the knife. It's like kill or be killed, basically. And it makes them both a lot more violent in the game, Ellie and Mel. And in this show, it's like, oh, she just happened to accidentally kill both of them, not because she was necessarily going to, but because Owen forced her to. And now, you know what I'm saying? It just kind of softens that character progression, because, in the game, it's very much evidence that Ellie's willing to kill all of these people if it means getting to Abby. Where, and again, we don't know whether or not she actually planned to let Owen and Mel live, like she says that she will. And I'm inclined to believe that she might have, because this version is bloodthirsty, but it's not anywhere near the extent of it in the second game. I feel like a broken record by comparing the show to the game so often, by the way, but it's impossible to talk about this show, at least for me, without also directly comparing it to the game. I just beat the second game for the first time a couple weeks before season 2 premiered. So it puts me in a position where I'm actually not sure if that was a good idea or not, because now everything is perfectly poised for me to directly compare it to the show's or the game's counterpart, and kind of compare and contrast the two. And that, as a quick aside, I'm not sure if that was the best call for me, but, that's neither here nor there. Can't really do anything about that now. So anyway, Tommy, Jesse, and Ellie all get back to the theater, and, Ellie thanks Jesse for coming back to help her, and, they kind of reach this mutual understanding finally, and that's when they hear this commotion out in the theater, and Jesse and Ellie run in to the other room to kind of help and see what's going on, and bang! As soon as Jesse runs through the door, he gets capped immediately, dies dead right there on the ground. And it's Abby. She's found them because I believe Ellie left her map at the aquarium. That's how she found them. So Abby's got Tommy at gunpoint, and this exchange plays out, exactly like it does in the game, which, if you don't know, is basically how it happens here. Nothing virtually has changed at all from this scene, except for the fact that Lev is there, who's a character that we haven't seen yet, but is a character who will be very prominent in Abby's story. Yeah, and then it all unfolds the way that it does, and, we cut to black on that gunshot, and then we cut back to 3 days prior, and we're starting the story over again, but from Abby's perspective. And that's the season. So what do I think of all this? It's hard to say. As I was watching this finale, not a lot surprised me. The only thing that they really changed that's very significant is the handling of Owen and Mel's death, and the fact that it was an accident, and this other aspect where Mel is asking Ellie to do the C-section, and which she fails at. So that was an interesting little wrinkle, but for the most part, this finale, it all carried out exactly the way I kind of expected it to. Ultimately just did really nothing that I was surprised by, and it ended on the exact point that I thought it would. Which, when you're watching a finale of a TV show, or a season finale, it just kind of left me like, all right. And you know, anyone who's played the game is likely going to have a similar experience where it's like, okay, you know, now we wait for 2 years and I'll get to see the rest of this carried out. And I don't know, it just was not very satisfying for me on that level. And the problem is this transference of mediums where when that happens in the game, it's like, wow, okay. And then you get to keep playing. We don't get to do that. We have to wait 2 years. So it's a problem as far as the mediums go, where, you know, that transference of characters from Ellie to Abby's POV plays a lot better when you can, you know, go to the bathroom and then come back and, you know, start to play the game again. You don't get to do that in the show. And so, you know, I can see fans of the show who've never played the game being really frustrated by this decision. It's a pretty irritating cliffhanger. It's, as far as cliffhangers go, I think it's incredibly unsatisfying and just annoying. And it's like, this is like, I don't know, it's not quite Walking Dead levels of, you know, cliffhanger with Negan and all that stuff, but like, it's pretty egregious, man. And it was, even as someone who knew exactly what was going to happen, it didn't really work for me at all. And so what I'm finding about this show is that at its core, season 2 specifically, at its core, it's, you know, they're able to really accurately and effectively recreate these iconic moments from the second game, because that second game does have a lot of really big, impactful, iconic moments. And the show is able to recreate them really well. And that's all well and good, but the connective tissue that is sort of there to kind of bind all of those moments together into a cohesive story is just not there. And they are cutting corners, and it's only 7-episode season, and it's just not enough to do that. Like, yeah, it's great that you recreated this scene perfectly or that scene perfectly, but you're missing something. Something is getting lost in translation, and it's causing the overall product to have it's suffering from that as a whole, because they're not willing to do all the legwork to really make this a, you know, one-to-one faithful adaptation. And I don't necessarily need one-to-one as far as all the story beats, but you need to be able to do the legwork, you know, to flesh out the characters and expand everything and give everything and everyone enough screen time in order for it to, you know, marinate with us and have the desired effect. And, you know, the creators have said that the decision to have a 7-episode season was intentional, but I also don't know if I buy that. And I've said it in previous videos, you know, reviewing past episodes, where it feels like something that was imposed on them, ultimately at the end of the day. I think that a lot of people's criticisms, not even just mine, but everyone's criticisms, would have been alleviated by a 10-episode season. And I just don't understand why they wouldn't do that. And, you know, there's talks of The Last of Us Part 2 being split up into 3 seasons of television, which just makes no sense at all. You could have told the whole story in 2 10-episode seasons. And maybe if that's not enough, what you could also do then is have the epilogue, or all, you know, all the end stuff at the end of the game, which I'm not going to talk about, have that be like a movie. Do like an HBO, you know, movie, like a 2-hour movie. That would be cool. I think that would be an interesting way to wrap up this story. But it just doesn't seem like they're willing to do that, which is very disappointing after they gave the first game a 10-episode season, which is a 15-hour experience roughly as a video game. So then how does it correlate that a 25-hour game is going to be stretched out into 3 seasons of television? It just doesn't make sense. And you're somehow able to, it's actually impressive because the creators have been able to make this longer game feel rushed by having these shorter seasons. It's just very disappointing, and it's frustrating as a viewer. Like, how are you going to do less episodes to tackle a longer game? It just doesn't add up for me. Some people have joked online and said that it's because they're padding this out and giving themselves enough time for Naughty Dog to make The Last of Us Part 3 so that they can then directly adapt that show once they're done finally with the second game, which, if that's the case, boo. Boo, do not do that. That is very egregious. I don't actually believe that that's what's happening, but, you know, it's just believable enough for me to be like, I really hope that's not what you're doing, because that's very disingenuous. And it reminds me of another HBO show that started off really good and then went down a hill. So yeah, it's just, this whole season has been very mixed. You know, I know I was very positive in previous episodes, but now that I know the full context and everything that's been going on and where we're at and where we're going, this just feels very mishandled to me. And what's more is that even though we have season 2 now, I still feel like I obviously don't have the full picture because the show has more seasons, but it's like, it's very possible that I will be able to look back on season 2 more fondly after I see how they handle season 3. So it's like, it's just not, nothing about this has been satisfying from a viewer perspective. It's all just more and more build up, which I know is what shows do. They continue to build up, but they also close out storylines and they settle things. And, you know, there is a level of satisfaction to be had, hopefully, in a season finale. And for me, there was none of that here at all. So, but yeah, overall, this season was disappointing. Ultimately, at the end of the day, despite having very high highs, overall, it's just been lacking, and it's lacking cohesion. It feels messy, it feels rushed, and it's frustrating, and it's just unfortunate. And, you know, that's kind of where I stand on it. All right, guys, so what did you think of The Last of Us Season 2? Give me your full opinions, your full reactions now that the season is over. What side of the camp are you on? Are you still on board fully, just as excited as you were going in? Or have you fallen off? Are you even going to watch season 3? I want to know everything, so leave it all down in the comment section and let me know. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't. We talk about new movies, old movies, television, physical media, and horror in general. So with all that being said, guys, please take care and watch more movies.